All right, what's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast weekly real estate tip. And Tim here to talk to you about the four biggest threats that you are experiencing, going to experience, and going to continue to experience probably for the foreseeable future for the rest of our careers inside this real estate industry when it comes to your own real estate business. And these are industry wide. So, look, I don't care what level that you're at inside your real estate business, whether you're a brand new agent, individual agent, top producing agent, you've been doing this 20, 30 years, you're kicking ass, whether you're a real estate team leader, real estate brokerage owner, these are industry wide. So these are the biggest four threats that we are facing right now inside of our industry. And again, are going to be facing these for the foreseeable future. Now, the first thing that I want to say is this: look, none of these are to freak you out, to scare you, but look, in business and life, we've got to identify, okay, like what are those threats? Any smart operator, and you may have heard this term before, does a SWOT analysis consistently on their business. So what is a SWOT analysis? SWOT. Okay, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the biggest opportunities? And then what are the threats? So in order to be able to adapt, to pivot, to thrive, like we have to have awareness of what those threats are so we can prepare accordingly. You hear me say this a lot on this podcast, but something that served me extremely well, for my whole entire career is hope for the best, plan for the worst. Look, I'm very optimistic. I'm going to look, hope for the best, be very optimistic, but then I prep and plan for, okay, what best case scenario looks like, but also what worst case scenario looks like. So if I prep and plan accordingly, then whether worst case scenario happens or not, like I'm good to go. So we need to have awareness of what these threats are, understand them so we know what to watch out for, what adjustments to make, how to change, shift, adapt, and pivot. Because look, you either adapt or die. It's not the strongest that survive. It's he or she that adapts to change in the most effective manner that ends up thriving and becomes victorious in this life, in this business. So I'm going to break down, okay, what these four things are. So again, that way you have awareness so you can pay attention to and making sure that you are preparing inside your own real estate business, regardless of what size your business is and what role that you, or what hat I should say, that you are wearing. Because again, this applies to individual agents, team leaders, broker owners. I'll tell you what's interesting is when I'm having conversations with, let's just say, a mega team leader that is a CEO of their business, they're not in production anymore, or a brokerage owner. A lot of times they think that these things don't apply to them, and that's a massive, massive mistake. So this is something that we all should be paying attention to, inside of our real estate businesses, so that we can pivot accordingly. That way we can make these adjustments. There is absolutely no reason that your business should not continue to grow and scale year over year, regardless of the market, regardless of interest rates, regardless of whoever the president is, or NAR lawsuit settlements and all this BS that we see inside of our industry, regardless of social media, technology, AI, regardless of all these things, your business should continue to grow and scale each and every single year. If you want to, like you might be like, hey man, my production's really good. I'm content here. Life is good. Okay, well, you should be able to continue to maintain that, inside your business. You and you alone dictate your own success. I was having a conversation with one of my best friends yesterday, and he was, he's not in real estate. He's a builder developer. But he was asking me about the resale business. And he's like, well, what are you seeing? What's going on in your market? How are you doing? And I was like, look, man, like we're good, dude. Like, okay, our market is declining quickly, inside my market here in Phoenix, Arizona. Not saying your market's doing the same thing, but like I was telling him, I was like, look, dude, during the great financial crisis, those were some of the best net years that I ever had in my real estate business. When you're looking at the worst housing market crash in recorded history, were some of my best I've had many years where I've closed more transactions, had higher gross sale volume. But when I'm talking like net, like pure net profit, those are some of the best years. It was just like printing money, during that span of time, even though it was the worst housing market crash in recorded history. So like I was explaining to him, I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter what's going on, right? Like with the overall market, with if you pay attention to stuff, you prep plan accordingly. Now during that time, man, I had a lot of agents that I knew that were dropping out of the business like flies. Oh man, I'm having to get out of business, having to go get a full-time job because the market. I'm like, dude, the market has nothing to do with it. You didn't pay attention to that particular threat, which we'll break down here in a moment, but that particular threat, so you didn't make the adjustments necessary. Just like we experienced in the last several years, when interest rates doubled in a 6-month period of time, when the Federal Reserve stopped buying $90 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities, when they started their quantitative tightening process going into 2022. we saw, interest rates jumping. Yeah, right. Well, a lot of realtors got blindsided by that, but they weren't paying attention. So when we know what these four threats are, it allows us to pay attention. So we're making the right moves inside of our real estate business at the right time. It's your responsibility to make sure. Sorry, if you can hear that, my damn alarm's going off on my phone. I set an alarm to create this podcast, and I decided to jump on early. Anyway, though, before I get into the four threats, if you are a real estate agent, you are a real estate team leader, you are a real estate brokerage owner, and you're interested about learning more about partnering with me so I can work with you hand in hand and making sure that you accomplish your real estate goals, partnering with me here at EXP, where you get 100% full free access to all my coaching, all my training, all my mentorship, all my support, along with my business partner, Mike Sherrard, who's hands down the best in the world when it comes to social media, AI, YouTube. So you get two for one, you get both of us for free. When I say partner, not joining my team, none of that. We're helping you and supporting you and building your own team, building your own brand, building your own business. We're kind of like that behind the scenes coaching support system that you get access to us for free to help ensure that you accomplish your real estate goals. So if you're interested in learning more about what a partnership would look like or could look like, there's going to be a link below, whether you're watching or listening to this, wherever you're at, either in the show notes or in the YouTube video description. There's going to be a link below where you can schedule a 100% confidential, 100% zero pressure Zoom call with me. What do I mean by zero pressure? Look, I'm not going to try to recruit you. I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to pressure. It's not my style. It just gives us an opportunity to have a conversation. Hey, man, here's all the things that we got going on. Here's all the systems, tools, support, mentorship, everything that we provide. Answer any questions that you might have. And at the end of that conversation, like if you think it's a fit for you, great. We can roll together and go do some big things together. If it's not a fit for you, that's okay too. We can still be friends. You have my word on that. So there's a link below if you want to go explore that opportunity. Okay, so let's jump into, again, the four biggest threats. And it's interesting because I see so many in our industry that are focused on the wrong things. We got to make sure that we are paying attention to the right things at a high level. So again, we can adapt, shift, change, pivot accordingly. And most in this industry, they think that, pivoting just means market changes. No, these are the four things that you're going to have to pivot towards. And one of them, yeah, is market specific. And that's actually number one that I'm going to talk to you about. But we got to make sure that we're paying attention and focusing on the right things. Okay, so when we look at the four biggest threats to your real estate business and are going to continue to be ongoing threats, probably at least three of these four for the rest of your career. Okay, number one is market conditions. So real estate market, economic conditions, just like we're all experiencing right now, right? Right now, it's the most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen. And I'm speaking to the U.S. because that's where I have the most data. That's where I'm at. I know most countries are experiencing the same damn thing that we're experiencing here. So if you're in another country, things that I'm about to say here, you may not be experiencing the same thing. But again, we have to pay attention to this, right? Because who's buying and selling real estate? Who are our clients? Who are our clientele? Now, maybe you're a team leader, a brokerage owner, and your clientele is your other agents. Okay, well, who are their clientele? Your job as a broker owner or team leader is to make sure your agents are accomplishing their goals, right? So who are their clientele? Dude, it's consumers. It's regular people out there buying, selling real estate, okay, or investors, on that front of it, but the vast majority of real estate that's bought and sold on an annual basis is regular people going out there and buying, selling real estate. So when the consumer is experiencing the most difficult time financially in recorded history, at least here in the United States, okay, it creates a climate, creates an environment where it makes it very challenging for them to go out there and partake in real estate. And we see this as you've got 42% lesser transactions taking place. That means 42% lesser people are able or willing to transact in real estate, versus the previous decade average. And again, that I'm speaking in national terms here. Your market might be down 15%. Somebody else's market might be down 50%. Like real estate's very hyper local. So I'm speaking kind of with broad strokes here when it comes to this, but we have to pay attention. Like I said earlier, during the great financial crisis, I had so many agents that I knew that are friends with that were reaching out to me and having conversations, or I'd see them, a couple months later, whatever. And yeah, I'm having to get out of the business because of because of the market. Like, dude, the market has nothing to do with it. And I wasn't a dick and shit, didn't call them out on that, but this is like the thoughts that are going on in my head. But back then we didn't have, YouTube, we didn't have podcasts, we didn't have social media. So we weren't kind of as connected. Yeah. I wish I could have created content back then, because I might have been able to help some of those people out that were struggling, that I didn't have awareness that were struggling, but okay. So if we look at that, it's like, okay, my career jumped in the market to 2005. And the reason why I'm sharing my career isn't to just talk about myself, but I want to articulate how I adapted. And this is one of the reasons why my business has been able to continue to grow and scale for 21, almost 20, May of 2026 will be 21 years for me in this industry. My business has continued to grow and scale every single year for 21 years straight, regardless of the marketplace and regardless of these different threats that I'm going to walk you through because I have awareness of them. I pay attention to them. So when it comes to number one, when it comes to market conditions, I understand that there's no such thing as a good market. There's no such thing as a bad market. The market is always good for somebody. Quit blaming the market, right? That you become a victim when you are blaming the market. What you're doing is you're giving up your power to something that's outside of your control. So when you're like, oh, my business is down because of the market, because of interest rates, what you are telling yourself, what you're saying to yourself, consciously, subconsciously, is that, okay, until the market improves, until interest rates improve, my business cannot grow scale. So I might as well just freaking give up, right? Instead of understanding this is what winners do, this is what leaders do, is they understand that the market has nothing to do with your overall success. Like the market condition, it's absolutely irrelevant, right? You and you alone dictate your overall success. So the market's going to be the market, right? So then my job is to assess the market, pay attention to the market, identify where the biggest opportunities are at, right? And going off this mental philosophy that I abide by, no such thing as a good market, no such thing as a bad market. The market's always good for somebody. As a real estate professional, it's my job at the highest level to identify whom the market is good for, pivot, adapt accordingly, adjust my focus, my energy, my marketing, my prospecting, my strategies to whom the market is good for. And if as long as I do that, I pay attention to the market and I pivot at the right times, my business continues to grow and scale. Because look at this, dude. Real estate transactions are always happening. Real estate transactions are happening every single day. When I hear, agents that will reach out to me for help right now and they start blaming the market, I'm like, do me a favor, pull up your MLS, pull, whatever. And then, again, because I guarantee there's agents out there kicking ass in their market. And then, yeah, they might make up excuses. Oh, they've been in the business so long. They make up stupid bullshit excuses to make them feel better about their situation. But that's all that they are. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm saying these things and being honest and open because I care, right? The more that we can take 100% full responsibility, it gives us our power back. Now we can be proactive. Okay, my goals are my goals. The market is the market. How do I make my goals a reality regardless? So here's what I'm always doing. Like I said, okay, I'm paying attention to who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, where they're coming from, where they're going, right? So, okay, 2005 to 2000, 2005, 2006 was very similar to 2020, 2021. Market's just going crazy, multiple offers on every single property. Sellers were just hoping the buyer back out, within like a 30-day window because they'd have another offer for $20,000 above that. It was just craziness. But that was followed pretty quickly by a market correction and then led into the worst housing market crash in recorded history. 2008 till 2012, the great financial crisis, right? So okay, when I first jumped in 2005, I'm focusing on traditional business. That's where all my business was at. I'm not going to go down to strategy at this one, but I was focusing on traditional business, regular buyers, regular sellers. But then in about 2006, kind of towards, I'd say third quarter of 2006, what I started noticing, and again, I'm paying attention to who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling. I noticed that one of my niches at that time was expireds. And I was reaching out to expireds and having conversations with them, and the homes weren't selling because the homes weren't selling because they were overpriced. But they weren't overpriced because they weren't willing to drop the price. They were overpriced because now they were underwater. They didn't have enough equity in their homes because the market started softening pretty fast and started, coming down even at that time, right? So 2026 was kind of similar to like, 2023, 2024. Now 2025 was more similar to like 2007. Not saying that 2026 is going to be 2008 again. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it kind of rhymes, kind of leaves clues. We'll see where this damn thing goes. But then okay, so then I started looking at that. Okay, what are options? These are people that needed to sell. They needed to sell to get out of their situation, but they didn't have the cash, they didn't have the equity. So then okay, we started seeing demand for short sales. So I started getting really versed. So I'm still doing traditional business, but then my business starts growing with short sales. And okay, traditional business is becoming a little bit less and less. Short sales becoming a little bit more and more. So I'm riding that wave 2006 into 2007. So then we hit, okay, now there's all these, start seeing, okay, foreclosures, REOs start taking place. And again, so how do I find this data? Of course, I'm doing my research, doing my due diligence, but I meet with a lot of my vendor partners. Like I'm meeting with my escrow company, escrow title company, because they see a lot more volume than we do. So I'm always asking them, like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing more cancellations? Are you seeing lesser cancellations? Is it traditional buyers, sellers? Is it institutional investors? Is it, REOs? Is it short sales? Like, what are you seeing more of? So I'm having these conversations with others, other vendor partners, others that might see more volume than we do. And I'm making those pivots, so then, okay, I start seeing REO, coming up. And initially, I had a little bit of resistance for a couple months at REO because I'm like, dude, I'm making like really damn good money on short sales. REO wasn't super high yet, 2007, but I saw that as a rising opportunity. But with the rate of acceleration of growth, of REOs and the amount of sales that I started seeing rise with REOs is growing pretty fast. Where I knew that, okay, that was a change I needed to make with my strategy, with my focus, with my pivot. So now I'm still doing traditional business, but that's again coming down slightly, doing short sales. Those are going up. Now at the same time, I add a third pillar to my business, which is REO, right? So now I didn't know how to go after REOs. I had to figure that out. That's part of your strategy, like a part of your, like, you gotta know what direction to go, but then you got to figure out how to get that business. So it took me 6 months of prospecting hours every single day to break in and get my first REO account. But then, okay, when 2008 hit, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns collapses, we just start seeing, mass foreclosures starting to hit the market. I was already positioned. I was already, set up for short sales, set up traditional business, set up REO. But again, traditional business, kept getting, lower, 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 right? Short sales kept growing, REO kept growing, and expanding. Because again, my focus is, okay, my job as a real estate agent, residential real estate agent, is to move property. So it's like, here's my geographic location that I work. Residential real estate is my product. My job is to know and move that product, right? So I got to always be paying attention to who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, where they're coming from, where they're going, who they are, right? So then I can make those pivots, and adjustments. Well, then when we hit 2000, let's just call it nine to especially 2000, 2010, as we get deeper into this, got to the point where like, dude, maybe 10% of my business was traditional, it's very low, for me at that time, because I'd only been in the business for about 18 months before we started to see a correction, in the marketplace. But then, 90% of my business was short sales and REOs, so I'm riding that wave and, pivoting there. Well, then in 2000, call it, I'm trying to go off memory here. This is a long time ago, right? But, sometime in 2011, right? Okay. I'm seeing traditional business not come back up yet. So, who's buying, who's selling, not seeing that come up yet, but I'm starting to see now short sales and REOs slowing down. Right. So then I start paying attention to, again, okay, we're seeing a market shift. Right. So then again, vendor partners paying attention where these closings are, who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling. And I'm seeing these things called hedge funds, private equity firms coming to buy real estate. I didn't know what the hell a hedge fund was. You had to go freaking look it up and search it. And like, I had no idea I hadn't even heard of that term before. Like a hedge, what? But they started for the first time really ever jumping in and starting to buy mass amounts of residential real estate, at least in my market. So then it was, okay, well, who are these people? Whether there's, I'm starting to see like 500 closings a month, in my market. I'm in a big market, big metro, through these. So I start seeing another opportunity there. So I'm still working my traditional business. That's still way down. That's not coming back up yet. Short sales are still working those. Those are coming down. But I see this other type of business now starting to skyrocket up. So then I start positioning myself, jumping in and figuring out how to get with private equity firms, hedge funds. Then next thing you know, we get in there and we're doing, 40, 50 transactions a month with those. So those are growing while these other stuff are starting to slow down. And then towards the end of 2012, 2013, hedge funds, private equity firms, at least in my markets, are really slowing down buying. Short sales and REOs are starting to slow down, but I'm watching the traditional side that starts kicking up. So now I start pivoting to scaling that side up of my business, right? So you're going to see, big market shifts like that throughout our careers. We're going to get, because you're going to experience all the different markets. If you're in this game for a long period of time, going to experience buyers markets, going to experience sellers markets, going to experience neutral markets, so we got to identify, what those shifts are. Now the shifts can be, it doesn't need to be, mass foreclosures or shit like we saw during that time, but this is where you got to pay attention. So it's like, okay, how did I pivot from, the 2020, 2021, into 2022 and what we're seeing now? Okay. Federal Reserve was very public about what they were doing. So again, I'm paying attention to these markers of what's going on, and I know I'm educated on how this is going to impact a real estate business. So, okay, we're going to go from quantitative easing, printing infinite amounts of money during that 2-year period of time. They printed, 50% of every dollar to ever exist in United States history, yeah, right, which created, the if you want to call it hyperinflation, but crazy inflation that we've, experienced this time when we're still seeing the effects of that because they really haven't stopped on that side of a deficit spending, but they're like, okay, we're going to go to quantitative tightening, so we're going to quit, printing so much damn money. But then as far as the real estate market, the Fed announced that we're going to start this with the backing off of mortgage-backed security purchases, right? Because the reason why interest rates got so damn low in 2 to 3% range, the lowest we've ever seen in recorded history, is because the Federal Reserve stepped in and became really the only and primary buyer of mortgage-backed securities. They're buying $90 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities every single month for like a 2-year span. And like, okay, we're going to wind this down between January 1st and June. I think that was what leading into 2022, maybe 20, yeah, whatever that year was. Again, I'm trying to go off memory here, but when we started seeing, interest rates, and we saw that 6 month gap where interest rates well over doubled, during that time. So then, okay, I know that quantitative tightening usually equals contraction. Quantitative easing usually, equals expansion. But then from there, okay, I knew that interest rates were going to go up. And they're going up 0.5% every single month for 6 months straight. So for what I did in my real estate business with my real estate team is we were just watching, okay, how is this impacting mortgage applications, right? Because one thing that I always pay attention to the Mortgage Bankers Association is what are mortgage applications for new purchases, not counting refis. Here, all these people are like, oh, refis are up, or, applications are up. Well, a lot of those are refis, right? I want to see, okay, for new purchase business, what are applications? Are they going up? Are they going down? That gives me a good idea of like what the next 90 to 120 days of buyer demand is going to be. So I'm paying attention to those, right? Um, so we're watching that, and then we're watching the amount of pendings and the amount of actual sold transactions, and we're adjusting our business plan accordingly. Now, I knew there was going to be big opportunities to come, like meaning who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, but there's, going to be a little bit of a messy middle. So at that time, initially, it was okay if we're seeing, let's just say, transaction volume drop by 20%. Okay, we know then we got to do 20% more lead gen, 20% more follow up to generate the same amount of business because we've got 20% lesser people willing or able to buy inside of our business. So we just were adjusting the amount of activities that we are doing based on the decline of transaction volume in our overall market, right? To make sure that our business wasn't declining. Then, okay, after the aftermath with that stuff, once we're through the messy middle, now we start identifying opportunities. Like, what am I doing today? Okay, I'm focusing on people that need to buy and sell, not that people that want to buy and sell, people that need to buy and sell. One of the most common things I get right now is, agents are like, well, Josh, I'm doing all this lead gen, lead follow up, but there's a bunch of tired, sorry, I can't speak today, tire kickers. Nobody seems motivated, and I'm like, look, you're focusing on the wrong people. I'm going after people where they need to buy and sell. There's urgency there. There's a life situation change. They're relocating, right? Like got a new job. They're relocating from a different state to our state or whatever. Like they need something quickly. And yeah, renting might be an option, but they want to buy. Right? So people relocating. Okay, then from there, okay, people going through a divorce, people that are 30 plus days behind on their mortgage where there's urgency there because they no longer can hold on because the most unfortunate time to be alive as a U.S. citizen, they can no longer hold on to that mortgage. Right? Probates. Um, Absentee owners, right? Where there's urgency there. That's how we pivoted today, where I'm not going after people that want to buy and sell, I'm going after people that need to buy and sell. So this is where I'm looking at and just always assessing, okay, what's going on with the real estate market? What's going on economically? What's going on economically? So I'm paying attention to the job market, paying attention to all these things, because that's kind of a lead measure to what's going to happen in the real estate market. But as long as you're paying attention to stuff and you're adjusting accordingly and pivoting and accordingly inside your real estate business, okay, your business should continue to grow and scale, year over year inside your business. And one of my mentors told me something early on that served me really well, so I want to share it with you. He's like, Josh, if you want your business to continue to grow and scale through the longevity of your career, you never want to have a down year or tough year. He's like, get damn good at learning to acquire and service traditional buyers and sellers, then get damn good at learning to acquire and service investors, then get damn good at learning how to acquire and service distressed properties. He's like, because no matter what's going on with the economy, what's going on in the market, whether it's a boom, bust, recession, whatever, one of those is always going to be strong. But then from there, he followed that up with, you got to know how to read markets, pay attention, and know when to pivot, know when to adapt. But the first step of knowing when to pivot and adapt is knowing what these threats are that we have to experience. Okay, these other three, I won't go as long on these three. These other three, that one was probably the longest. I wasn't planning on going that much of a deep dive with it, but sometimes when I get into these, I just get into it because I love this stuff. Okay, number two is tech and AI. Now, if you look at AI is just a piece of technology. It's been around since the 1950s. It's nothing new, but it's accelerating at an exponential rate, right? So, we're seeing it, and there's going to be a lot of disruptions, a lot of changes. And when I talk about threats, just like I said, okay, you know, with the real estate market, that doesn't mean it's going to be a threat to us as realtors. It's going to be a threat to realtors that don't adapt. Just like tech and AI, I am not convinced for 1 second that realtors are going to be replaced by technology and AI. At least not anytime in our careers. Maybe that's just me being naive, but I don't see it. There's too many hyperlocal rules, regulations. You got too many, like it's like we're spinning 30 plates. Like people don't realize they're outside of our industry, how many roles, how many different things, how many emotions, all the things that we have to do. People have no freaking idea. So it always pisses me off. And part of it pisses me off is because, you can take it insulting, but when it's like every time we watch a movie or a TV show, when they, portray a realtor, they're always portraying them as like sleazy slime ball, making fun of them. And, but the general public, doesn't hold us in high regard. Some do, but overall they don't. But they have no idea what the hell it is that we actually do. I'd love to see them sign up and do this job, right? I mean, you all know the failure rate. 90% of agents fail in the first, 3 years, and that's because they had no idea what the hell they were signing up for. You and I do, right? But anyway, cut off that tangent there. So we got to be paying attention to though the disruptors, with technology, with AI, and what I was leading to say a moment ago is, look, I don't believe for a second that tech AI is going to replace us as a realtor, but what I'm certain on is that those of us that leverage it correctly are going to dominate those that are not. It is no longer an excuse, no longer, a valid reason to be like, oh, man, I'm not tech savvy. No, get over that shit. And yes, you are tech savvy. Quit this crap. I hear people all the time, even agent partners of mine that'll come to me and say, Josh, I'm not good with tech. I'm like, well, dude, like you figured out how to use your iPhone. You're using the hell out of that thing. Like, you've adapted the technology that you need to adapt to so far. I don't think sometimes people give themselves enough credit. One thing I was really, proud about with our industry and kind of surprised about, honestly, but I thought our industry did an amazing job during the lockdowns of pivoting to virtual, pivoting to, Zoom consultations, pivoting to virtual, but we were forced in a very quick manner to adapt to that. So if you're somebody that isn't, maybe tech savvy at this point, give yourself some credit, man. Like you've adapted to all the technology that you've needed to adapt to this point of your life to operate your life. So why do you have a limiting belief, or why do you have doubts that you won't be able to pivot going forward? But my recommendation is to just, hey, you go from a closed mindset, fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Well, hey, I might not be the best at it right now, but I'm going to invest, 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. That's all you probably need, to go out there and paying attention to stuff, learning this stuff, seeing which tools make sense to, implement inside my business with this stuff, how this is going to impact my business, but that's going to be a big disruption for a lot of people. Cause I'm telling you right now, so many in this industry are so damn fixed in their ways that they're not going to adapt to this stuff. They're not truly committed. Those of us that are committed are going to do what we got to do. We're going to adapt how we need to adapt. We're going to show up. We're going to do the things that we're going to do to go out there and thrive in this business because we are committed. And that's what committed people do. They do the work and show up and do the actions regardless of what their emotional state is. Right? So number 2 is tech and AI that we have to have awareness of. Number 3 is what I call rules of engagement. So this is different ways that we have to operate and abide by inside of a real estate industry. So we just saw this, about a year ago with the NAR, the seller side class action lawsuits. Okay, that disrupted, our industry. And I'm not saying it disrupted your business by any means, but that was a disruptor, right? When it came to that. So if we look at this right now, okay, the DOJ has been very public that they do not like this NAR settlement, that just took place. They want true commission decoupling. Thinking they've been very vocal on this stuff. They don't like the way this played out, right? And they've reserved the right to, when this expires in 5 years, so we got 4 years left, that they reserve the right to reopen, this settlement and try to get their true commission decoupling. Because what we have right now, on paper looks like decoupling, but it's not true commission decoupling. Like you still have a ton of sellers paying buyers agent commissions, just in a different path to getting there. Yeah, right. Well, then right now you may not have awareness of this. It's not getting the same exposure and news that it did. But now we're going through the buy side class action lawsuits. Soon as that's done, we're going to go through RESPA. Yeah, right. And the time RESPA's done, then boom, that 5 year time window will have expired, and the DOJ will probably reopen this one up. So things that we got to pay attention to. Again, when I say threats, they're not going to be these are anything that are going to make you be extinct unless you choose to not pay attention, bury your head in the sand, and not do the necessary pivots and adjustments. Like I mean, I was getting, talking with so many people. And also, hearing so many podcasts that were just fighting about, oh, this is BS. I can't believe they're doing this. And I'm like, look, dude, it is what it is. Your opinion, my opinion are irrelevant. And look, I'm not saying you can't have your opinion about things, but it just is what it is. It's beyond your control. Nothing that you can do, nothing that I can do can change, like we'll use that settlement, as an example, that lawsuit, an example. Like you and I couldn't change that. Just is what it is. So instead of going out there and changing it, yeah, right. I'm sitting there. It's like my house is on fire. I'm not going to bitch about, oh, I can't believe my house is on fire. It shouldn't be on fire. No, I'm going to get all my family out, get them to safety, make sure they're all taken care of. Yeah, right. So we can live another day, right? So that way, maybe that's a stupid analogy. I don't know. But I'm looking at this. Okay, it just is what it is. Just like, okay, if you don't like what's going on in the market, dude, who cares? It is what it is. I don't bitch about the market. I don't complain about the market. It is what it is. It's beyond my control. My business is what's within my control, right? So hey, like you may not like all this AI. You may not like, shit that's going on in the world or with the government or, whatever. And yeah, you can make the impacts that you can make with voting or whatever, but it's just like here's the rules of the engagement. How do I need to play to go out there and make the life that I want, make the goals that I want? One of my mentors, Darren Hardy, would always tell me, he's like, hey, Josh, you can't change the world, but you can change your world. Focus on your world. I might not like the fact that there's wars, not might like the fact that there's, murder takes place, all this, nasty things that happen in the world, but the reality is they do, right? So I can choose to live my life and go out there and create an epic life for myself, and focus and control what I can control. So we got to pay attention to, okay, what does this mean? What does this look like? And then also, okay, if I know that the rest of the lawsuits are coming, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm protected and we've got everything buttoned up and I'm abiding by making sure I'm fully RESPA compliant in every aspect of my business, which you always should have been anyways, but you can, if you weren't, now's the time to start buttoning that stuff up, so we know how to pivot and change and pay attention to this stuff and adapt. Okay, the number 4 threat, and this is going to be the biggest threat, right? When it comes to this, which is yourself. So when I talk about yourself, right, I got a few things I want to share with you. I'm looking down to just look at my notes to make sure I'm not leaving anything out. So when I talk about yourself, right? So number one, like I said earlier, like you have to understand the threats. You got to make sure that you pivot. Nobody's going to pivot for you. Like you got to make sure that you're paying attention to this stuff, having awareness with this stuff, leading yourself and making sure you are making those pivots. Like I said earlier, you got to make sure that you're not being closed-minded, that you're being open-minded, that you're operating from a growth mindset. So I talk about leading yourself. Number one, making sure you're not operating from arrogance. When I say arrogance, I mean you got to always be a student. I don't care how long you've been doing this. Look, I've been doing this almost 21 years now. I've sold over 7,000 homes. I'm still learning all the time. I spend more time learning and in self-development today than I have at any point in time in my career. It's interesting. It's like the more that you know, the more you realize that you don't know. I never look at this of like, oh, I know so much. I know this. My learning journey needs to stop. Or I never get to the point where I've got this figured out. My way's the best way. No, man, I'm always looking forward. And this is what the top of the top do. This is what the expert, I'm not saying that, like I always can tell somebody's an expert, in their field, whether it be, health and fitness, medicine, real estate, if somebody is so certain of like, hey, this is the only path, this is the best way, this is the only path, I know they're not a true expert, right? A true expert, like, well, hey, man, it depends. Yeah, right. And they're not arrogant, because you get to that point where it's like, again, the more that you know, the more that you realize you don't know shit. I was more arrogant when I was, making 100 grand a year versus, making, a million a year. I think it might be the opposite of that, but no, man, like the lesser that the more arrogant, typically people are. And if you look at the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's kind of been proven, when it comes to that. So when I say arrogance, right, because I'm not saying that you got to be like a pompous freaking prick, right? Like what I mean by arrogance is if you are finding that inner voice in your head where you're like, oh, I already know this. I already know this. I already know this. That's an element of arrogance. So what I've learned to do for myself is anytime, because it happens to all of us, I catch myself when I hear something, oh, I already know this. And then I just tune out, right? So number one, I use that as a trigger to follow up with 3 questions. Okay, if I already know this, okay, number 1, am I doing it? Number 2, have I mastered it? Number 3, do my results prove that I've mastered it? Right? So I would just challenge you if you think you already know this thing, right? Okay, well, if you've mastered that, I should be reaching out to you, begging you to come on my podcast for an interview because you're one of the best in the industry at what it is that you're doing. And I look at it, dude, if you're not there yet, and even if you are there yet, like you still want to be, always learning, open-minded. Again, the best in this industry that I find are the best students, man. When it comes to this. Okay, so then number two, not pivoting at the right times when I'm talking about yourself, right? You got to lead yourself to making sure you're pivoting at the right times. So we got to have awareness with, the biggest threats and then make sure that we are adjusting and pivoting, at the right times in our business. You're going to see this with other things. And this is, I guess, part of tech, but it's like, okay, there's a point in time in my business where I was doing a lot of radio, a lot of TV. There's a point in time in my business where I was doing a lot of Google pay-per-click, but then, okay, when Facebook Ads Manager came out, I'm testing the two. And then for me, I started seeing way, way better results, on Facebook paid ads. Google pay, Google's making a little bit of a comeback, but we'll see if that gets disrupted by, ChatGPT. Looks like a lot of people are making a move to using ChatGPT more so than Google, and so we'll see where this all goes, but like I'm always paying attention to different lead gen strategies. How would this be disrupted if I do this? I'm having a conversation with one of my agent partners the other day that is a big Zillow Flex team and with the growth that they want to grow their business, so I'm just advising them. I'm like, hey, look, number one, Zillow's not going to get you to where you want to go. Not saying to abandon it by any means. And I know you might love Zillow, you might hate Zillow, like whoever, those of you watching or listening to this, but for them, it's been very lucrative, right? But I'm like, look, that is not something that you could control. I mean, ride that wave, but to get from the sales volume that you're doing right now to their 5-year target that they want to get to eventually, I'm like, even if you become the number one, Zillow Flex, team in your market, like there is just not enough lead volume, to get yourself there. But then the secondary factor is, we're looking at threats. Yeah, right. I'm like, what if you lose your Zillow account? What if, and I'm not, and I wasn't telling them to abandon it. I'm like, no, freaking milk that thing as long and as hard as you possibly can. But we're going to have to add some additional strategies, some different additional methods to get you to your target. Because when you want to 4x something, like you can only put so much gasoline on one fire. That fire is going to burn, is going to get to a point where it's not going to burn bigger, brighter, and harder. Like, okay, you might need to build a couple more fires, right? So, but then from there with, okay, like we don't know there's rumors out there that Google is looking to buy Zillow. Okay, well, how might that disrupt it? Yeah, right. Or this RICO lawsuit bullshit. When I say bullshit, I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm just saying, whatever. I shouldn't have said bullshit on that. But okay, with the Zillow RICO, lawsuit that's going on. Okay, who do we know how that's going to be? Like we don't. Right. So this is why we're always paying attention to these things. So we got to know when is the right time to pivot inside your business. Right. Because when we do a SWOT analysis, we're always looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, your biggest opportunities right now, but then those threats. A lot of people forget this threat portion. This is why I'm going so deep in this podcast today, because I want you to pay attention to these threats. And there's other threats, inside your business that you might have. Okay, maybe there's a threat because, hey man, maybe you're too soft skinned. You don't have enough. Your skin's too thin, right? Like not soft, but thin skin. Right? Like maybe you need to thicken your skin and learn how to do that, so you can make, like fear of rejection, right? Is another way of putting that. Whatever that is. You know, um, you always got to look at, okay, what are those threats inside your business? Maybe you haven't learned to operate with the right level of urgency, right? Like, okay, we got to identify, okay, our own personal threats that we need to adapt and adjust and develop inside of our business. Now, the last one that I'll talk about with yourself here is your inability to lead yourself. And this is, the biggest issue that I find with most inside of our industry, because we are a freaking unregulated. It's when I say unregulated, yeah, there's a lot of regulation. I mean, but what I mean by here is, okay, you work in the corporate world, and I've had so many, agents that have worked on my team, or, that I've worked with before that were new to real estate, but they were in their, corporate world and sales, and they just murdered it. They crushed it. They did so amazing there. They jump into real estate, and then they just flop, shit the bed, and have to drop out of the industry. Now, why do they thrive in one environment versus this environment? They didn't have the ability to lead themselves. I mean, they have great skill sets. They have great communication skill sets. They have great people skill sets. They proved that, with their previous sales career, but they didn't have the accountability piece. There it's like, okay, they had to clock in, they had to clock out. They had certain metrics that, KPIs, certain numbers that they had to meet every day, every week, every quarter, right? And if they didn't, because there was massive oversight, dude, they'd get reprimanded, they'd get fired, they'd lose their bonus, whatever that was. Then you come over and you jump into real estate. It's like, dude, nobody's telling you what time you got to be up. Nobody's telling you what to do every single day. Like you are just on your own, right? So if you do not learn how to be self-disciplined, how to be self-accountable, how to lead yourself, right? Like you're going to have a very damn difficult time in this industry. And this is why 90%, I hear so many that like, oh man, it's because brokerages, don't provide right training, or at least the vast majority of them don't, where I'm at, they provide insane training, but that's another conversation. But even then, dude, it's like okay, like I've seen new agents or whatever in every environment fail. It doesn't matter. Like nobody has a 100% success rate. I've had coaching clients that I've worked with that have failed, that were brand new agents or whatever, that didn't yet know how to lead themselves. And the number one reason they fail is they can't lead themselves. Like I can make sure that you have the right schedule, the right strategy plan, where every single day down to the hour what you need to do, what you need to execute on with full precision, where there's no guesswork. I can make sure you have every resource, every skill set, every tool, every system, everything that you need, but you got to do the work. It's like before I got into real estate, I was in the gym business, right? And it just blew my mind, man. How many people would sign up for a membership? It's like New Year's resolution time right now. Gyms are packed, right? But how many people go buy that membership? They got the little key tag, but they never show up. It's like you can have the best facility with the best damn equipment and even the best trainers inside that facility to help make sure that you're doing the right workouts and whatnot. But if you ain't getting your ass in the door, if you're not leading yourself to get there, you're never going to have success with your health and fitness journey. Same thing in real estate, same thing, right? So you have to have that ability to lead yourself. So when I talk about ability to lead yourself, self-accountability, self-discipline, now you can be like, well, Josh, I'm just going to go get an accountability partner. Okay, good luck with that. Well, Josh, I'm going to go pay this coach an absurd amount of money to hold me accountable. Okay, good luck with that. I'm promising you right now, that is just a freaking marketing ploy for them to steal your money away from you, because nobody can hold you accountable. It's impossible. Nobody's going to be at your bedside to tell you to get your ass out of bed right then and there in the morning. Nobody is going to be behind your shoulder all day, every day. Are you doing the action? Like you're not going to have this drill sergeant in your ear 24/7. You got to become your own drill sergeant. I had to learn this when I was a personal trainer before I got into real estate. When I was a personal trainer, I had to get really good at, okay, how do I teach my clients, my personal training clients, to become self-accountable? Because yeah, in the gym, I could put them through a workout, but I needed them to jump. I needed them to show up and not cancel, right? I needed them to show up so I could put them through that workout, but I put them through the workout and there's a little tiny element of accountability there. But I knew that, just how health and fitness goes. It's like, dude, like shit, this is probably 90% of what they're doing outside the gym. That's more important than what we're doing in the gym. The gym's really resistance training. I mean, that's really important too, but I knew for them to have the success that they needed to have, like they got to make sure that they are successful outside of the gym. So I had to, get really good at teaching them how to hold themselves accountable, right? How to lead themselves so they could get those results in their mouth. Because I wasn't going to be around there 24/7. When they go put the wrong thing in their mouth, I could slap it out of their, slap it out of their hand. Nobody's going to be there for that, right? So quit looking for outside sources to allow you to be successful, right? Success is an internal game, man. It's you. You're in this game. This is a you game, right? Now, of course, you can have teams and you can have coaches and you can have mentors, and this might sound like me being a hypocrite because yeah, dude, I coach a lot of agent partners all over the globe. I spend a lot of time with them, but I also understand and know that, dude, information isn't power. I can give them the information. I can give them the roadmap. I look at myself like I'm an architect, right? It's like, okay, I can know where you're at, what you're doing, where you want to go. I can architect, reverse engineer the exact architectural plans with precision to get you there. But I know I can't, like only they can execute on it. Yeah, right. So we got to make sure that you have that ability to lead yourself. So the four biggest threats that you need to pay attention to, that you need to be adapting, adjusting, pivoting, and it all starts with awareness. So again, just recap these: market conditions, tech AI, rules of engagement, and then number four is yourself, right? Being able to lead yourself. You are the biggest threat to your potential sabotage of your own real estate business. All right. So as we wind up here again, if you are interested in learning more about partnering with me at EXP, where you get 100% full free access to all my coaching, all my training, all my mentorship, so I can support you along this whole entire journey. You also get amazing tools, systems, other elements of support. We got 2,500 full-time support staff to support you, to support your agents, to support your team. So if you're looking and learning more about what this partnership looks like, and we're in 28 countries. So I got agent partners all over the United States, all over Canada, Mexico, Dubai, New Zealand, I'm in South Africa, right? So we're not just here in the US. But if you're looking about learning more about partnering with me inside your real estate business, where we can work hand in hand together to ensure that you will crush your real estate goals, there's going to be a link below, either in the show notes or the description, based on where you were watching or listening this, where you can book 100% confidential. It's going to be between me and you. Nobody will know about it. I know the importance of that. Like when I was looking to make this move, I couldn't have a soul know. It's like I knew, my wife knew, that was it. Yeah, right. That I was even exploring it. Not when I was, but even then, until I made the move, final, I couldn't have anybody have awareness of it. So I understand, you know, the importance of confidentiality. But then from there, it's also 100% zero pressure. One thing you're never going to get from me is high pressure. I don't push. I don't pressure. I'm not going to try to recruit you. None of that bullshit. It's not how I roll. I found that if you got to hard sell somebody to join, then you got to hard sell them to stay. Like, I only want to roll with people that want to roll with me. This is something that you think is a fit for you. Great. And if you don't at the end of that call, cool. Still be friends. Give us a chance to spend 30 minutes together, hour together, whatever. I'll try to deliver some value to you. And even in that time, learning more about your business. Well, if you don't join, it's still of value to you. But on that call, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down, okay, where your business is at, what your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals are, what your biggest obstacles are. Then from there, that gives me the data that I need to walk you through. Okay, hey, here's what we got going on. Here's all the additional tools, systems, support, coaching, training, mentorship, other wealth building tools that we have available to support you accomplish your goals. Answer any questions that you have. At the end of that call, again, if you think it's fit for you, great. Not, that's okay too. We can still be friends. So that link is below, and it's going to be with me. The reason why I stress that is I get a lot that will book these calls. I'm like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be you. I thought it was going to be, somebody from me. No, man, it's going to be me. We're going to have that conversation, at least as of right now. Maybe, and if you're watching this 2 years from now, it might be, change up. But at least for now, it's going to be you and I on that call. All right, guys, keep crushing it. Keep kicking ass. I will see you next time. Peace.